Hello, I'm Midnight Specter, and today we're going to talk about jobs. So, I'm sure a good majority of people watching this video are in the workforce or intending to enter into the workforce. I've had quite an experience with jobs in my life, and I feel like now would be a good time to go over some of these experiences. I'd also like to get this out there now versus later on in the video, but sadly for a lot of businesses, they don't really care about you or your well-being as a person. Now that's the norm, but for the most part, most businesses don't really care about you as a person. You may have coworkers or bosses that generally care, but upper management just sees you as a number, which is unfortunate. I'm also sad to say that it's a lesson I've had to only learn really only recently. I do have to give thanks to my last boss for being a good dude and looking out for me though. Now with that out of the way, let's get some work-related stories. My first job kind of spoiled me because it was pretty relaxed and honestly a fun job. I worked at a farm with some other people close to my age and it was a super chill experience honestly. There were horses, which, I love horses, so it was perfect for me. And plus, I was the animal kid, so growing up, I always wanted to interact with a whole bunch of different animals. And this job, I was going to interact with a whole bunch of animals as well, so that's a huge plus. Funny enough, the interview wasn't like a stereotypical interview where you sit down and talk about your achievements because they understood a lot of us were just kids looking to get a little spending money. So part of the interview was going around and us interacting with the animals. I wasn't too worried about the snakes because I grew up watching a lot of Crocodile Hunter, and I learned how to handle a snake, but I wasn't prepared for were the mice. Now at the time, I was afraid of mice, but I also really wanted this job. So when we walked over to the mouse tank, we had to pick up a live mouse. I was kind of nervous, but I reached in and picked one up, and it was actually pretty chill. I figured it would try to bite me or something, but was actually rather indifferent about being picked up. I actually find mice to be really cute now, but a nuisance when they get into your house or car. A little side story about mice and cars is that one time I was driving an SUV, and I live in a wooded area, so mice getting this stuff is just generally how that goes. It's kind of a fact of life out here. But I was going about 60 miles an hour, and I was wearing Converse, so I could feel something touching my foot every now and again, but my sense of touch isn't the greatest either, so I figured, oh, maybe it's just a shoelace or something else touching my foot. Well, I got kind of curious and looked down and turned on my dome light and watched just for a few seconds when I saw a mouse run across my foot. So if I wasn't afraid of mouse by then, I really had to get over it then because there's not much what you can do when you're driving an SUV at 60 miles an hour and a mouse runs across your foot. Now, back to my first job. It was a really awesome experience for me. I got to work with the horses and other farm animals, and I loved when they got used to you and they'd come up to you and groom you. One of my favorite feelings, honestly. I also remember there were these two horses in particular that were a mother-daughter pair, and had never been separated. So some guy came to the farm and offered to train the mother of this mother-daughter pair. Well, of course, the daughter hated that and went absolutely wild, kicking and screaming. I'm not entirely sure if anyone has ever heard a horse scream, but honestly, if you heard one late at night and you didn't know what it was, you'd be setting a land speed record for how fast you'd be running away. She had actually attempted to ram one of the other workers. So I was the afternoon shift, and they told me she hadn't been fed yet. I said that I would feed her. Of course, everyone thought they were about ready to watch me get injured by this horse and had their phones out, but I had built a pretty good relationship with this horse, so when I entered her stall with food for her, she immediately calmed down and started eating. No more kicking and screaming. However, as soon as I left the stall, she started again. I suppose the manager was so tired of hearing 4 hours of her going wild, he just told me to stay in the stall with her for that shift. I honestly felt like a princess. Like, here I have this giant animal being all nice and cuddly towards me, while everyone else was chopped liver to her. Unfortunately, as all good things, they have to come to an end, and I ended up selling most of the animals because they couldn't afford to keep feeding all of them, and they ended up at an auction. I sure hope they're all living nice, fulfilling lives somewhere. Now after that, I had a few other jobs bouncing around from place to place, and while I kept searching for that level of, recognition from previous jobs, like I had from coworkers and my boss. Everyone had said I was a rock star worker. I remember overhearing one of my managers saying that they wish they had 6 more of me. However, I had completed college and I struck out to find a job in my field, which is how I landed at MSP. If you don't know what an MSP is, it's a managed service provider, and we provide tech support. I have worked at 2 of them, and honestly they were both miserable experiences. One place I was expected to use my own vehicle to respond to equipment installations, which if it was a small mom and pop shop I would totally understand, but this was a large company with a fleet of vehicles. I remember one cold winter day looking at my dwindling fuel gauge. I just decided to fold the mirrors in on one of their cars to see if anyone used it, since someone would have had to fold the mirrors out to drive it. No one ever unfolded the mirrors, so it just kind of collected ice and snow. So I asked, hey, this car's outside, no one's using it, can I use it? They said no, of course. I was fresh out of college, and honestly, I was so over this job, I just decided to be a little shit whenever I could. So I took as long as I could on every service call, and I did a lot of thrifting on company time. Because if they didn't care about me, why should I care about them? Even if they said I couldn't use their car, they should be like, here's a gas card, so you're not spending all of your own money to do work for our businesses. And that's all it really would have taken, honestly. I had finally had enough and asked either for a raise or I was quitting. They denied the raise, so I put my 2 weeks in. On my last day there, they decided to send me all the way up into the city after I asked them not to. And I knew I wouldn't be getting off by the time I was supposed to, and if I worked there, since I was a salary person, not hourly, I wouldn't be paid extra for coming home late. So I thought to myself, this situation is a bunch of baloney. So I said, the hell with that, and so my car broke down, and I had a fun day of thrifting on the company dime, and when I came back to the office with about an hour or so to spare, I just pretty much just chilled and walked around, and then I turned in my stuff and left. So then, I found another MSP, and I was hoping things would be better there, but things were not better at all. I had this boss who was super mean and micromanaged me a lot. There were many days where I would go back to my car and just cry after work. A lot of the times, I just wanted to get started early on something if I didn't have anything in the lab, but we had to wait until he decided it was time for me to do something, meaning that stuff would sit there till the 11th hour, and I'd have to rush to get it done. I remember the dude got into my face and yelled if I scratched one of the brand new MacBooks, I wouldn't have to worry about being there anymore. I took that my sign as I should really leave. So I just did some busy work for the day and didn't do anything really that would contribute to any productivity, and I grabbed my lunchbox and other items and I just drove home and found another job. Fortunately, I've had much better luck with my employment as of recent. I've even had some stellar coworkers and bosses. However, I still know I'm just a number to upper management, and they can tell me to get out if whatever arbitrary numbers don't match up with their metrics. I found that out once at a company I really enjoyed working for, but since work was slowing down, I was just a number costing them money. Luckily, my boss gave me plenty of time for a heads up, and I found another job that makes considerably more than what I made. I even got more confident with telling people about my disabilities, so they know I have anxiety and autism, which has been super helpful because they always check in with me now to make sure I'm okay, which is huge for me. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed today's video, and sorry it was a bit of a downer, but you've got to take the bad with the good sometimes in life. Hopefully you guys have better job experiences than me than I did, and if you haven't entered the job market, just remember, don't let any company treat you like trash. Remember your worth and stay positive.